Hello, my name is Naseem, and in this video we will talk about random variable, the next topic within probability. So in last couple of videos we already got a fair understanding of different topics like what is an experiment, what are the sample space of the experiment, what are events of a sample space, and how we can calculate probability of these events. In this video we will try to understand random variable and how to calculate probability of random variable. I mean probability distribution of a random variable. So once again let's do experiment to get to know the fundamental of random variable. We have two different coins and these are fair coin. One face of these coins is having head and second face of this coin is having tail, right? So we have tail and we have head. At the same time on this coin also we have head and tail on these two faces of these coins. We are throwing these coins, we are actually tossing these coins and we are writing down, we are creating sample space of this experiment. So as a sample space what we will have, so this is the possible outcome of the random experiment which we have done. If someone asks, for example, x is a statement and this statement is saying the number of heads appear. So we need to calculate, we need to find out means this x value for each of the element of the sample space. So if for example I calculate x for HH means x number of heads for H and H, so the value would be 2. At the same time if I calculate x for the value of next outcome which is HT, then we will get 1 because in this outcome we have only one head and we are interested in the number of heads only at this time. For the third outcome TH we will have once again 1, and for the last outcome which is X we have T and T. So in this outcome there is no head, so the value of X would be 0. So one thing we can observe here is that the values of X is actually varying from 0 to 2. The lowest value of X is 0 and the maximum value is 2. So one thing we can say here, because the values of X is varying, so this X is a variable, right? Because of this property of having varying values, and the domain of this x is the sample space of the experiment which we have done. Let's talk a little bit about a function. We have, for example, we have a function x and function is x square plus 3x, for example. So this function is actually dependent on the different values of x, and the values of this function, the specific values and the set of values of these functions will depend on to the limit of the values of x. So for different values of x, the value of x fx means function will be different. In the same manner, the values of x in this random experiment, the values of x are varying according to the values of favorable outcome of the sample space. So this is why this x is a function and the domain of x is the sample space of the experiment which we have done. So we can define a random experiment is a real valued function. We have real values from 0 to 2. So we can say that this x is a random variable which is having real value whose domain is the sample space of the random experiment. So the next thing we will talk about is how to calculate probability distribution of a random variable. So in this specific experiment what we can talk about is that we have x and we have different values of x which is 1 0 1 and 2. Here you can see for HH we have 2, for HT we have 1, for TH also again we have 1, and for TT because there is no head appear in this outcome so we have 0. So we have possible outcome, possible values of x of the random variable is 0 1 and 2, and we wanted to find out p of x next. So let's find out p of x equals to 0. For 0 we have only tt, right? And once again for this sample space the favorable outcome for x equals to 0 is tt, and the probability of tt only for this sample space is 1 by 4, because if you wanted to find out the probability of tt it would be 1 by 4 because favorable outcome divided by total number of outcome. So we have 1 by 4 for x equals to 0. We can write it here 1 by 4. For p x equals to 1 we have two different sample space, two different outcomes favorable to this condition. For x equals to 1 means head is number of heads appear 1, so we have 2 which is HT and TH. So calculate probability of HT which is 1 by 4 once again, and probability of TH which is again 1 by 4, And if you wanted to find out p x equals to 1, we need to add those, because there are two number of outcomes which are favorable to this condition. So 1 by 4 plus 1 by 4. For third, px equals to 2. So once again, if we go back to the sample space, there is only one number of outcome which is favorable to, both are heads. Number of heads is 2. So the probability of px equals to 2 would be 1 by 4. Fill those values here. 1 by 2, 1 by 4. So this is a probability distribution for this random variable x, means number of heads appear. And this is how we can create, probability distribution for a random variable of a sample space, which we have done. One thing we can, talk about a little bit is that there may be number of variable for the same sample space. So we talked about the random variable which is number of heads appear. We can talk about another random variable which is y, and it says us number of tail up. So this is how there may be a number of different random variable can occur for same random experiment which we have done. Now my next topic is how to calculate mean of the random experiment and variance. These are two topics I wanted to talk about in next couple of minutes in this video. So remember, in our last videos under statistics, we already talked about mean and variance. So for example, we have different number of data points inside the data set. We have a data set x, and we have different points of x, xn, and we wanted to find out mean of x. So what we have to do is we have to add all of the x, and we need to divide this x by number of data points of the data set. This is how we can calculate mean of the data set which we have. But this time we have two different parameter of the data set which we have. We have values of random variable, and at the same time we have probability of the random variables values. So how to calculate mean of this random variable and its distribution? So there is a formula. First thing we need to do is that to calculate mean of random variable. For example, we have different values of the random variable. So we have x1, x2, x3 and xn. So go back, we have x1, x2, x3, and there may be number of n values. So I am considering x1, x2, x3 and till xn. And at the same time we have probability distribution of x, which is px1. We have probability distribution. So now in our data set we have two different parameters, which is random variables values itself and probabilities. Now calculate mean. How to calculate mean of this type of data set? We need to multiply each of the data point with the probability itself and add them. x1 multiply px1 plus x2 multiply px2, and in the same manner we have to add pxn multiply x. So we concise this formula. What we will get for all I start from 1 to n, mean of the random variable would be xi multiply pxi, means values of random variable itself multiply by the probability of the random variable and addition all of the possible outcomes of the random variable. This is how we can calculate mean of a random variable, and we call it formula of mean is mu. So this way we can calculate mean of the random variable of a sample space. Next topic we will talk about is variance. So we wanted to find out variance of the random variable. I want to remind you how to calculate variance of the data set which we have in the class of statistics. So for example, we have x data set and we have different data points inside data set x1, x2, x3. In the same manner xn, we have different topics, we have different data points, and we want to calculate variance of the random variable. In statistics, first we need to calculate mean by the simple formula x1 plus x2 plus x3 plus xn divided by n, right? And we want to find out deviations of these data points with the mean itself. Let's call this mean mu. So we need to find out deviations of all of the different data points of the data set. So the first deviation from the mean would be xi minus mu and its square. In the same manner x2 minus mu and its square, and like that we have to calculate square of the deviations for each of the data point. So we have xn minus mu and its square. And to calculate variance, means sigma square, we need to add all of the data sets and we need to divide it by the number of the data set. So what we have to do is xi minus mu square plus x2 minus mu square plus in the same way xn minus mu and its square divided by number of data points, because we have number of n data points, and this is how we can calculate variance in the statistics. But this time we have two different parameters of the data set. We have value of the random variable and probability distribution of the random variable. So there is a simple formula. Once again, let's consider we have for the random variable we have random variable x, and we have different values of it, x1, x2, x3, in the same manner xn, and we have probability distribution of x, which is px1, px2, probability of x3, and in the same manner we have probability of xn. We have this, two different parameters of the data set, and we wanted to calculate variance of this data set. So first thing, we need to calculate mean of the data set. So to calculate mean of this data set, go back, apply this formula. This is how we can calculate mean of the data set. Let's call it mu, and then we have to calculate deviations of each of the data point, means the values of the random variable from this mean, right? And what it will be? It would be xi minus mu and then its square. Again, in the same manner, we need to calculate square of the deviations from the mean of each of the values of data set, means random variable. So x2 minus mu square, x3 minus mu square, and xn minus mu square. And we can calculate variance of this data set by this formula. We have xi minus mu square multiply by pxi. Same, we need to add all of the possible values, minus mu square multiply by pxi, and in the same manner we need to calculate xn minus mu square divided by pxn. If we concise this formula, so this would be started from I equals to 1 to n, and xi minus mu square multiply by pxi, probability of specific value of the random variable which we have. This is how we can calculate variance of the random variable, right? So this is the formula for variance, and this is the formula for mean of the data set which we have. Now, how to calculate standard deviation? Standard deviation, we call it SD. So once again, the standard deviation is under root of variance, which become sigma, and finally it would be I start from 1 to n, xi minus mu square multiply pxi. I hope you understand these three fundamental of random variable and probability distribution of the random variable, how to calculate mean of the random variable, and standard deviation and variance of the random variable. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy learning, and see you in next video.